Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9. I'm Paul Kretschmann. Today's host is Steve Tuzinu, and here he is with his guest for today.
Welcome to the WIHS Journal. I'm WIHS General Manager Steve Tuzinu, and with me in the studio is Mike Costanza. He is the founder of Constitution State Educators. Mike, we're here talking about teachers and unions. What's going on that you are interested in teachers leaving the unions?
Steve, thank you very much for having me. Our group, Constitution State Educators, is determined to let as many teachers as possible around the state of Connecticut understand that they have the right to leave the union. The two major unions here in Connecticut are the Connecticut Education Association, which is part of NEA, and the AFT, American Federation of Teachers. And in recent years, more and more teachers have grown disillusioned with some of the extracurricular activities, shall we say, the politics that these unions are supporting that have little to nothing to do with our profession of education. And instead of allowing our dues money to go to radical political causes that we do not feel like we can support in good conscience, many teachers have decided simply to leave the unions. They have a right to do so. They're still fully protected if they do so. And our group, Constitution State Educators, wants to make them aware of those rights and how to go about leaving the union. But August is the key month because most of the time teachers can only leave the unions during the month of August.
So what's going on in the minds of teachers? Are they have some complaints, and you mentioned one of them. Are there other concerns as well?
Complaints differ from district to district. Some teachers feel that they're paying dues to unions that are just sort of inactive, aren't really fighting for them, that they just don't see those unions fighting for their day-to-day needs in the classroom. Other times, the unions may be active, but they may be active with the wrong priorities. They may be devoting too much attention to politics, the culture wars that we see raging around us every day across the country, and they're not focusing on educational issues. So we feel that the unions have lost their way. The Connecticut Education Association and AFT-CT, they seem to be puppets of the national organizations, which are focused solely on national politics and generally for the benefit of only one political party, which just doesn't speak for a lot of teachers.
So they're partisan for the most part.
Way too partisan. In fact, virtually every dollar that they spend on politics goes to one political party. They spend on average about 2 to 1, $2 towards politics for every dollar that they spend representing their members.
How big a movement is this that you're involved in?
Well, nationwide, in the last couple of years, thousands of teachers have left the unions. Our group is just an informal group on social media, on Facebook, Constitution State Educators. But in the last couple of years, we've grown to over 600 members. We've helped hundreds of teachers obtain information on how to go about submitting letters to their unions to withdraw.
So what happens if a teacher wants to leave and it's beyond August?
They can still submit their letter to resign from the union, and I would encourage them to do so. However, the unions typically employ what they call opt-out windows or withdrawal windows, where they limit your time to a very narrow part of the year in which you're allowed to leave. Some teachers have fought that successfully and have been allowed out, usually with the help of lawyers who stand by to represent them for free on these issues. But the worst case scenario is they'll be stuck until the following year, the following August, in which to leave. The CEA, which is Connecticut's biggest teachers union, specifically says you can leave only during August, but we have seen some teachers escape at other times.
Are there disadvantages to teachers leaving the union? Is there any form of retribution?
Typically what happens when you submit your letter, you may hear from your union or from some officer in the union trying to explain all the benefits you'll be giving up. But usually those tactics are rather misleading. And if teachers know their rights, which I'd love to go through real quickly with you, they'll realize that they're really not losing anything by leaving the union. It's a legal right, it's protected, and they're still protected by their contracts.
Are there any legal problems in leaving the union during the month of August?
No, not at all. And if you leave, you have the right to leave, first of all. That's point one. Point two, if you do leave, you owe the union no money whatsoever. There was a time before the Supreme Court Janus decision in 2018 where the union could still collect fees from you. That's no longer the case. They can no longer collect a dime. Third, if you leave, you're covered completely by your contract. Your pay, your salary, your benefits, your pensions are still completely yours. That's unaffected. Fourth, the unions still have a legal duty of fair representation to you. They cannot legally discriminate against you for no longer being a dues-paying member. That's a matter of law. It's in black and white. It's called the Teacher Negotiation Act here in Connecticut, which spells that out in black and white. But the fifth fact, which is important, teachers who want to leave the union, they have the option of joining non-union professional associations. One of them is Christian Educators, and these groups will protect you legally above and beyond what teachers are generally expecting from their unions.
You mentioned politics. How else are the unions failing teachers?
We feel that the unions have left us. That's what started this. For every day and for every dollar that the unions devote to what I call the culture wars, to radical politics that are drifting into the classroom, they are abandoning their key mission, which is to protect us. Unions should be insulating us and our students from those culture wars. Instead, they seem to be throwing us into it. They're doubling down every day. We see Randy Weingarten at the AFT, for example. We see the NEA and the CEA chiming in on some of these radical political issues that have alienated parents around the country and around our state. And we want to see our unions protecting us and our students from that. We just want to teach. The unions should be helping us do that.
What kind of influence do the unions have on what is taught in the classroom?
The unions have a great deal of influence. I mean, if you think back to the COVID pandemic and the shutdowns and the mask mandates, not only were the unions supporting those things, they were largely the architects of it. And as more time goes on, we see how closely connected the unions were on the federal and state levels to those COVID reactions. It's the same thing with curriculum, and it's the same thing with political issues like the debate over transgender issues in schools and critical race theory in schools. The unions are often part of that. They're there with state bureaucrats pushing those issues into our schools.
Supposedly, we are done with the pandemic. What sort of influence does the union have to do with wearing masks and vaccinations and so forth? Do they have an influence on teachers in that regard?
The vaccine mandates that teachers here in Connecticut faced, that was part of the union. The unions were there cheerleading it and helping to push that. That was actually what gave the impetus to many of the members of our group, Constitution State Educators, to leave the unions in the first place. We know teachers right here in Connecticut on a first-name basis with them who lost their jobs. Either they were pushed out or chose to resign rather than comply with mandates that they felt conflicted with their own religious values, their own personal autonomy. And the unions were as much a part of that as anyone.
I understand a lot of teachers are leaving the teaching profession entirely. Is anything being done about it? And if so, what?
And I think that's a symptom of what I'm describing here. Teachers, we work hard. We work really hard. We care deeply about our students, and we tend to pour our hearts and souls into it. I can say that about every one of my colleagues that I've taught with at the elementary, middle school level. Again, that's why we need unions to protect us from the culture wars and not throw us into it. Teaching is hard enough before you add politics into it. And then when you have to go to school and you're faced with possibly teaching concepts as fact that directly conflict with the values of you and many of your students and their families, that's only going to add to the burnout. And I think that's a big part of why we see teachers leaving the profession or shying away from it in the first place.
If we have teachers listening to this program right now and they say, I have got to get in touch with these people, how can they do that?
Our group, Constitution State Educators, is on Facebook. You can find us there. There's a couple questions to answer, and we let you in the group. You can also email us if you're not on Facebook. Our email account is unionchoicecse@gmail.com. And you can find me as well on social media if you'd like, on Facebook, Michael Costanza. We're happy to talk to people and talk them through the process of leaving their unions. It simply requires sending a letter, again, typically during the month of August, to the union, tell them you no longer wish to be a dues-paying member. And we have templates that we provide to make it as easy as possible for teachers who are ready.
Our guest today has been Michael Costanza. He's the founder of Constitution State Educators. Thank you for joining us on the WIHS Journal. I'm Steve Tuzanu.
Once again, today's guest on the WIHS Journal has been Mike Costanza, and he was interviewed by WIHS General Manager Steve Tuzanu. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049, 860-346-1049, or email to office@wihsradio.org, office@wihsradio.org. Opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of this station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs for 104.9 WIHS.